Hi guys! Today we have the co-founders of Evolved Play, Kevin Caldwell and Dr. Kelly Tran. Previously, Kevin was a senior development lead on League of Legends at Riot Games, and Kelly was a professor at High Point University. Their company, Evolved Play, focuses on the integration of learning and education within kids' games. And even though games are usually something that we think of for kids, most of the topics that we've covered so far in the games that we've discussed have been games for adults. So this is the first time that we've really gotten to dive into that topic, which I think is very exciting. If you like this episode and you like this kind of content, remember to like and subscribe so that you can see more of it in the future. And if you have any questions for any of us, please leave them in the comments down below and we will be sure to answer them. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, how are you doing today?
Hey Ari, how's it going?
Hi.
Hey, good.
Doing pretty good.
We've got a big audience today. Yeah. Let's see. We've got Kevin Caldwell and Kelly Tran. And I think probably the coolest thing about you guys, in addition to all of the industry stuff, of course, is you guys actually working in a hybrid of games and education, right?
That we are.
Games and learning is my preferred way of phrasing that.
Yeah, it's less school-esque.
So tell me about your company. It's called Evolved Play, is that right?
Yeah. 3 seconds, sorry. So Evolved Play,
That was close enough.
as a game-based learning company, haven't quite figured out how to exactly sort of call out what we're doing in sort of non-industry terms, but effectively we're trying to create really compelling, engaging game experiences that provide learning opportunity and learning moments within those games. I think there's been a lot of games that we've all played growing up and sort of throughout our gaming histories that we've learned things from. For me, one of the early memories was playing Ashwin's Call and learning Roman numerals based on their economic system. And that's one of the things I go back to as sort of a basis, kind of an inspiration for what we're doing.
That's pretty awesome. Kelly, what are some of your favorite games as well?
In the learning space or in a more general way, because that could that could go on a while. Yeah, so thinking about in the learning space particularly, I think part of what is motivating us is a lack of a lot of really great educational games or learning games, and there certainly are a number of them out there. But in general, a lot of games have sort of learning objectives that are maybe slapped onto the mechanics of the game or the narrative of the game, as opposed to being integrated where you have this match between what you're doing in the game and what you as the player or user are supposed to be learning. And so when I met Kevin, which actually thanks Alex for introducing us, that is how we know each other. Yeah. We were just really aligned and thinking about that kind of alignment between game mechanics and learning outcomes. And we were just like, yeah, maybe we can do this better, right? Which, is sort of one of the premises of our company, certainly.
Yeah, and I think I've said that more than a few times, right? That game mechanics reflect the human psychology, right? And the way that we learn and interact with games is the way you learn and interact with the universe, right? So it makes sense that you would naturally want to bring these things over.
Yeah, I think it's that we're a byproduct of our environment. So that's one of the ways in which we're looking at this is creating a digital landscape, a digital environment that can help kids learn and families learn in really productive, healthy ways that haven't really been heavily touched on in our sort of academic early childhood development area of focus.
So Alex introduced the two of you. Were you both working at the same company at the time?
Oh man, so this is a true COVID time story. So I actually met Alex on Clubhouse, where we were hanging out a lot in one of the groups there, the Game Industry Cocktail Hour group. And I knew that I wanted to leave. So I came from a university position, and I knew that I wanted to leave for a number of reasons. And I was kind of on the job market. I was, starting to do interviews. And one day on Clubhouse, as part of that group, there was like a job fair. And so it wasn't even in the job fair. It was in like practice your pitches for the job fair. And I just like popped in and everyone was like, oh, wait, you want a job? And then Alex was like, hey, go talk to my buddy Kevin. And then it was like the funniest thing where it's, these two total internet strangers. But, right away, well, not to speak for you, Kevin, but I was kind of like, yes, like this is somebody who I think gets it and is aligned. And we kept talking from there. And then it was like literally right before my contract was due to resume my my professorship. And it was like the day before. And Kevin was like, you want to come on? So it was like this really funny whirlwind thing. And one of those things, we're all remote that, I don't think would have happened before the pandemic and before, I think online networking, was of course always a thing, but was such a thing where it's like, this seems like a totally reasonable thing to do, is just jump in with these internet strangers, essentially.
I think you're safe. I think you're safe. Speaking for me in that context, it was a very warm, easy connection in terms of being on the same page in a lot of ways about the current state of games and educational games and sort of learning software. And yeah, I think I was on vacation, and you were sort of nearing that moment, and I was like, all right, let's talk. Sort of went out and was talking on the phone, outside, and yeah, it was awesome. I think from day one, it was a very easy connection.
Yeah, definitely.
So very, very great senses there, Alex, on making that introduction. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to say that was an easy connection. Actually, I think that's a good segue into your individual backgrounds, right? One of the things we often hear upcoming new students say is, oh man, do I need this specialized degree? Do I have to be this type of game developer? Do I have to take this lesson, know this engine to get into the industry? And I think that your diverse backgrounds actually showcase that's just not the case, right? So maybe we start with Kelly and go over background, and then go over to you, Kevin, and then we'll talk about some of the interactions you and I had and see where the conversation flows naturally from there.
Yeah, certainly. So I've been all over the place, as I think many people in the game industry have been. A lot of people have these kinds of winding paths. And as a former professor of game design, I actually have a lot of thoughts as to, those sort of paths that you were talking about, Alex. But I'll save those for now to just say that I got my PhD at Arizona State University in learning literacies and technologies. And I was especially interested in games and game design and the ways that games can support learning. Before that, I was actually studying digital arts and sciences. I planned to go into industry right away, but I took sort of a detour into academia, if you will. And so I've done a lot of research around players and communities, and actually specifically around families and intergenerational play. So it was a really, really nice fit that I was able to find with this project that I'm on with Kevin now. And so I have a research background, I have a design background, I have a bunch of kind of weird things that fit together, which, I think ultimately, makes people stronger designers and stronger sort of people generally. I think having this kind of diverse experiences is a really, really nice thing.
Yeah, so in terms of my background, I graduated in 2007, which was during the recession with a degree in industrial design, which, there were no industrial design jobs in Southern California during the recession. And, had a friend that worked at Blizzard and, had sort of grew up with Blizzard games, having a passion for everything Blizzard. And he's like, hey, why don't you, come test on the night crew? We've got some positions open. And, applied and kind of got my foot in the door testing World of Warcraft Burning Crusade patch 2.4, which was the Brewfest patch. And, had prior to that a lot of experience in teams. Grew up playing 3 sports: baseball, football, and hockey, and kind of really had a knack for teamwork and communication and collaboration. And I was able to sort of very quickly transition out of sort of that testing role into a leadership position on the StarCraft 2 team. And that early experience testing was really fundamental in me thinking about game development and how to sort of design games and produce games and develop quality in games. So yeah, I think it's been 15 years now in the industry.
Yeah, I remember in those early 15 years, man, things have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And it's thankfully mostly for the better, I think. Though, you can never say where the path's going to take you exactly, right?
Right.
And I think that's a fascinating thing, is that you guys ended up in the same places, working together as co-founders, right? Despite having come from, like literally, hey, mechanical engineering background, and worked in a studio for a decade, and hey, this is something I care about and I study and I've spent a lot of time networking, understanding, and now it's a question of how do you bring that kind of intellectual research side and the practical boots on the ground side, and how do you mesh that to bring an amazing new experience, right? Now, one of the big questions I always have is communication styles, language, lingo. What type of friction have you guys hit along the first few months of your journey together? Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that it's been really good. Actually, this is something we talk about on a regular basis with our other co-founder, Sandy, as well as our other full-time person, Manjeet, where it's just like we all get along really well. And I think part of it is just I think are all just sort of like nice people. Like that sounds like such a reductive thing to say, but I think we all do take great care to consider each other's feelings, and I'd say that the communication as a result of that is really open, and I think we're generally transparent with each other as well, and it's been really interesting having this completely remote culture too, and so we're like on Slack all day, and that it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because I've called Slack Discord a couple of times by mistake, just because it's like I'm just got all these pings, right, and sometimes I'll go on there and like, I don't know if you saw Kevin the other day, Sandy wrote something, I'm like, that's a mood, and I'm like, fire emoji, you know what I mean, and I'm like, that's like too casual, but this kind of also is how I would speak in real life, right, just kind of translated. So it's been an interesting thing to kind of feel how we build a culture, right, and we've talked about that quite a bit too.
Yeah.
It sounds like...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it sounds like a really good company culture to me. I feel like a lot of what we view as professionalism is very old-fashioned, but more than that, sort of has a lot of classist undertones that are sort of meant to keep people out and make it an inaccessible space. So I like the accessibility of feeling comfortable having a more casual conversation with your coworkers and having that friendly dynamic. I think that sounds really healthy.
Yeah,
thanks.
And for so much of history, right, in the game industry, there's been all of this myth of the auteur, right? This one chosen one who makes decisions for the game and others execute, right? That myth has lived for a very long time. And it's not only extremely false, whenever you run into it, it's almost inevitably toxic and a good sign to get out.
Yeah. I'll just sort of add to that, having spent a decade or so in quality assurance, kind of working my way up the totem pole, so to speak. I think a lot of those experiences that I had in those environments, across multiple companies, really helped me get a perspective on that, right? I remember, being in QA and sort of learning game development at Blizzard, and sort of seeing, how many people contribute to a game, and how many people from different experiences and with different skill sets and different, perspectives, really set a foundation for me in terms of what kind of company and what kind of culture we want to create, and sort of how we work together. The last couple of years at Riot, I had a really unique opportunity to work sort of cross-functionally across, I think, 40 different disciplines. And it was one of the most unique experiences in sort of recognizing that, everybody has a valid perspective, a different perspective, and how do you make space for that? We did a lot of work on trying to figure out how to facilitate team and product development, and sort of product release with as many voices represented as possible. And so, in working towards starting this company and building it, and sort of, looking at who to bring on, it was really important to me that, we kind of have that culture from the beginning.
And I just want to emphasize for the audience that, those type of cultures that I mentioned before are certainly not the only ones. There's many game studios, and in fact, I'd say the majority of game studios I've interacted with are kinder, nicer environments, right? There's certainly still some of those extremists out there, but there are a lot of industries and groups that are about hey, how are the teammates feeling? How do we work together? They may not be making the cutting edge crazy thing, but they do exist, and they are definitely something to be looking for when you're in the market. I remember one of my friends, actually was one of my previous roommates. Her name's Kitty. Hi, Kitty. was went through 4 companies in a year. And I'm not going to say too much, but went to one of them, just was like, Alex, I'm constantly stressed and working out all the time just to keep like myself sane. The next one was like, oh, hey, this one's way larger and more successful, but I feel like I'm, not finding my own place. And then another one, she was like, this one is great, but it's just, I don't connect with the product. And then the last one, she's like, this one, we're making games and contract for other developers, but everyone's taken care of. I have a place. I understand what my purpose is. And you know what? I love the community that I'm part of. And I think that's so, so important when you're working on a team together, because you're going to be spending a majority of your life with these folks, even if you aren't working overtime, right? Sharing ideas, needing to be vulnerable, expressing those ideas, and being able to work through difficult problems, right? And in some ways, it's an extremely serious relationship. And other times you want to be able to have levity and lightness and moments and an alignment on how you connect with each other. So what can be a completely viable environment for one person can be completely mismatched for you. Did you have any moments like that in your career, Kevin? Because I know I certainly did.
Yeah, I've had a number of them. Some have been really special, like you're sort of saying, in the positive, and some have been really alienating. Part of that experience was also sort of role for me when I transitioned into my first director role. It was one of the most like sort of alone, like one of the moments that I felt most alone in my entire career was, kind of growing up in these very collaborative, sort of jovial, friendly QA environments where you're sort of working elbow to elbow with everybody and like you really get to know people. And then all of a sudden I was the boss in a company that was very corporate and very top down and sort of very perhaps legacy corporate culture. And I just felt so alone and out of place. And I ended up sticking with it for a couple years. But when I left, it was such a huge breath of fresh air. Sort of recognizing that that environment was not a place that I felt comfortable or it absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Kelly, you said you have a PhD, so you're a doctor, and I mean that's something that takes a long time to accomplish and to get to the place that you were in your career. Did you have any experiences like that? I mean, you said that your contract, I think you said, was running out at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
So I guess I'm wondering what that was like.
Yeah, it was a decision racked by all kinds of existentialism, I guess. It's tough, I think, especially in academia. You spend a lot of time, training a particular skill set. Most people in academia assume, I'm going to be a professor, I'm going to do that forever. And so recognizing that maybe that wasn't my path, at least not for now, especially, it was a really tough decision. And it's something I talked about with a lot of people, and especially, my mentors in academia and outside of academia and my friends. And funnily enough, I'm convinced that it's like a thing that spread socially, because I actually had a number of friends also leave academia at around the same time I did. COVID really broke educators. Check on your educator friends, because they're not okay. So it, I was already sort of leaning in that direction. And then, once the pandemic happened, I did a lot of sort of thinking about my life and what I wanted to do. And, I haven't regretted it one bit, though. I have to say, for all of the, like, is this right before I made the decision, once I made it, I know I had done the right thing. I don't think, Kevin, I've even talked to you about this, but, I like have zero regrets. I tell my colleagues sometimes that still work at the institution I worked at, I'm like, text me when something annoying happens so then I don't have FOMO. The only thing I miss is students. Like, I miss my students, and, I miss my colleagues too, because I had some really wonderful colleagues and I miss hanging out with them. But, I miss having students, and I miss, doing that kind of mentoring. But, the thing is, there's a lot of room for that in other venues, certainly. And so, that's the only thing I miss. Like, other than that, I'm like, yeah, this is great. Like, I'm so much happier.
Now, was that connected to any additional purpose or discovery about who you were as a person? Or
Yeah, actually, Alex, there's a number of things. One is that I really wanted to have my hands on something in a more sort of tangible way. So one of the things about academia is, it takes a very long time for things to get published. It's like, okay, I wrote this 5 years ago. It's not even relevant anymore. And I'm still trying to, go through the publication process. I'm just somebody that I think has always been a little more creatively oriented. And so not being able to really do that kind of work was really hard on me because I wanted to have more creativity. And another thing is that I think in terms of industry, right, it's really important to see role models of I am a woman. I am half Vietnamese, first generation, and I don't see a lot of people like me, especially in leadership positions. And so realizing that I think where I can have the biggest impact is actually being in the room, right? I thought it was in the classroom, but I think actually being in the room, making decisions, being there for people, I don't want to say look up to because that sounds kind of aggrandizing, but somebody visible, right? And somebody who maybe now in this role can mentor people like me and elevate other people. That if you're talking about the kind of sense of purpose,
Yes.
that's certainly the sort of grander idea behind all this. And it's one of the things that did make it easier to make my decision. Because, having that sort of purpose of serving others, I think makes decisions easier, frankly.
And, I remember, when I decided to start teaching, it was kind of the opposite thing. I've been in the industry for a very long time. And I'm like, you know what? People came to me and like, can you just explain a couple of these things that I do? And I kept getting the same questions. I'm like, I could probably just make this into some material. And then I ended up doing a bunch of one-on-ones with like 8 students. Like, this will be a one-time thing. I'll price the bar crazy, like $1,000 or $2,000 a student, and it all sold out. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, well, apparently there's demand for this. And then when you go through that, you're like, oh man. And now I've watched this when I first did my first class, it was 6 years ago. Oh my gosh, wow, I feel old. And now I've gone on to see them grow and develop. 4 of them have actually gotten jobs with former employers of mine. One went on to actually open a game, like a card game shop, and another one, went on to go actually completely change industries entirely, but sends me messages every 6 months being like, wow, just learning from this changed my life and how I treat others. And it's just like, it's that sense of connection and legacy, right? That you're hoping to bring in the industry that you've already gotten to experience through education, right? And it's fascinating that we partition these things because there's so much similarity there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, where when I was like, man, giving up teaching is hard, like seeing, say, the venue that you teach in, right? It's like, okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a particular form or in a particular place. This is something that is still open to me as an experience. And that actually helped a lot. So yeah, we've kind of converged from like opposite places, right? And I think having both perspectives, right, is extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. With your company, I did not realize how new it is, and it's still pretty young. So I imagine a lot of the projects that you have worked on are still in early phases of development. But I'm really curious now, what kinds of projects are you working on? And at least for the stuff that you can share publicly that's not top secret, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, I don't know like that we're being super top secret about what we're working on. We're creating an adventure RPG with game-based learning components to help kids develop emotional intelligence, relationship skills, and resilience. And we're in early testing. We just sort of hit a milestone in the last month where we've started to see kids sort of 5 to 10 be testing our game and playing our game. And we're approaching it pretty leanly. We don't want to do the grand reveal. I think a lot of successful game projects, the last couple decades started out as very lean projects where they tried to activate and sort of engage with a community sort of sooner rather than later. And that's definitely the approach we're taking. We've been doing a lot of iteration. We've done 3 or 4 different prototypes. And I think in the last month, we've really started to sort of hone in on kind of what the experience is that we're making it and why it's fun and like how we can leverage it to sort of meet some of our learning objectives.
So can we hear maybe a couple of those lessons? Like what was something you thought was fun that wasn't, that you had to pivot on, or something that what you didn't think was going to be fun and then turned out to be, and you just were like taken aback at it?
Kelly, do you want to take this one?
I think, user testing with kids is like the funniest thing in the world. So when I was, a researcher at Arizona State, it was the same thing. We actually, for National Science Foundation, we were making games and then, testing them with kids. And the gulf between like what you think the user is going to do and what the user is actually going to do for kids is so much wider than like in any other context, because they're just, it's so interesting. They're like humans with totally different perspectives than you have. So, we've been finding the kids really love just kind of exploring and like moving around, right? Like Kevin saw that last night where, they just, there's a lot of little completionists where they're like, I just have to go to every space and like see what's happening, which we were, have sort of a goal-oriented game. So it's interesting to think about that and think about, it was also validating for directions we're moving for some of our designs where it's a little more open, a little more exploratory. It's like, okay, kids do like this. Awesome. We've done a lot of fine tuning and a lot of things that, kids also give great feedback and very honest feedback, that they're usually not too worried about hurting your feelings, which is great because then we can iterate on that. And, some of the suggestions have come like straight from kids, frankly, that have been really, really nice.
Yeah. One of the sort of specific points was from our first play test. We had a simple door puzzle, right? Like not had a key and there was a door and a place to put the key. And, the way that we had thought about that UX and instrumented the UX was too difficult. Like the child couldn't figure out exactly like what they were supposed to do with the UX. And I think that sort of feedback on, we're dealing with a lot of different sort of literacies in terms of reading and oral and digital and game literacy in terms of what kids have been exposed to up until that point in their life, which, 5 to 10 year olds have not experienced a ton of product or life or technology or what have you. And so to see that sort of on the first playtest, them getting stuck at that place, I was like, oh, it's such a no-brainer. Like, of course that was going to be too hard. Why did we think that was going to work? And I think that's one of the fun parts about lean development, right? Is like very quickly iterating and prototyping and getting things in front of kids and or players and getting their feedback, because you never know what they're going to enjoy. And to sort of echo Kelly, like the exploration, the discovery, that sort of journey is very synonymous with life. Maybe kids don't necessarily know that, but it's like, how do you sort of navigate? Where do you choose to go? Why do you choose to go there? What are you looking for? Kids don't necessarily have the answers to those questions, but they have the motivation, they have the interest, which has been really exciting to see. Kelly, did you want to talk about the energy energy mechanic at all?
I wasn't sure if we're getting that granular with the mechanics, but we had sort of like a roll to move mechanic that essentially, it was themed differently than being like a D6, but it was a D6, and you had to, like, every time you move, you had to roll to move and then like kind of like, progress around. And then we found, actually people on our team as well as kids just kind of like spamming that. And, a kid finally like just said specifically like, hey, this mechanic is kind of whack. Like, it's in phrase like, it was just like, yeah, I think it would be better if like this wasn't in the game and maybe you did this other thing instead. I was like, okay, nobody thinks this is fun. Like this just like needs to go. So, but, like Kevin was saying, lean development, it's like, well, we're already, on that iteration, right. Of being able to change that and rethink the way the movement works.
Yeah, and this actually is a really common pattern I want to call out to the designers, right, listening, which is, knowing when and where to put uncertainty, and the way of expressing uncertainty is incredibly important. When you put uncertainty at the front of a decision, right, like a D6, right, it either doesn't matter, like Mario Party, right, we're just going to hit some random square and you're going to play a mini game no matter what happens, right? Or it ends up being frustrating because it feels like it controls your freedom and decision making. Whereas if you just give that energy and they can choose how much to burn at this point and save some for later or go on. I don't know the exact mechanics of your game, right? It puts the empowerment on how they engage with the product back in the hands of the player themselves, which ends up being usually a more joyful experience, even though at the end of the day, it's the same sort of uncertainty that you can put at the end of their decision as opposed to at the beginning of the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very
Alex,
wise.
how dare you say that the roll doesn't matter in Mario Party? Whoever gets the highest number is going to get the star.
Mario Party. Oh,
Sure
can I go on
is.
a Mario Party tangent?
Go
Mario
for it.
Party.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I had in college. I had the Mario Party Grand Champion belt. Okay, when we left college, and I did this by always being in second place until the last round. That is the only way.
Why is that belt not above your picture back there? That's what I want to see.
Because Ian took it back afterwards. Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, so if you think about what games teach you, right, through their mechanics, Mario Party teaches you that none of your actions matter and you live in a cold and uncaring universe. Because I am convinced that it's just especially if you have like an AI player, right? If you don't have 4 players, like I feel like there's always a chosen one. Like it just totally gives you this feeling of like no agency. And depending on the iteration of Mario Party, right, some of them just have these like at the end, it's like, oh, this person gets a star for like an arbitrary metric that you did not know that they were measuring, and it's very unclear. And I do enjoy Mario Party, I should be clear, because the mini games are fun, but the overall I mean, Kevin knows, like I think this is why I'm so like anti-roll to move as like a general thing. I think Mario Party traumatized me from being like in first place and then getting kind of rubber banded back to the end. So I don't know. I need to try the Alex maneuver. Which is the, I think, official tactical name for what you do. I haven't thought about trying to stay in second.
Thank you. I also call it chosen one syndrome.
That's funny. That's the valid mechanism for Mario Kart too, because then you never get blue shells.
Oh yeah, Mario Kart, absolutely. yeah.
Ah, man, isn't it amazing just looking back, right? In this one series of games that came from a guy who had been making little things for a little while, has utterly swept the innate world. Everyone knows who Mario is. Everyone has been touched by those games and those products. I actually just picked up Satoru Says, the book, just a few days ago, which is from the now past president of Nintendo. And, it's interesting because there's a few things they did right and consistently, right? They introduced ideas, they then escalated them, and they mixed them up. And they just repeat this over and over and over again. And it's little cycles that come back over and over again that makes it, one, familiar as a Nintendo game, makes it accessible to a wide audience, and just makes it fun to play with because you kind of know what you're getting, but you don't know exactly how it will be expressed. And I don't know, to me, that's what's really interesting about game design. It's all these micro patterns that re-express themselves. But what was the thing that first captured your mind, Kelly, when you were like, I have to get into game design and I'm going so hard on this, I'm going to become the PhD in design?
So I, up until that point, I was like, I'm going to go into industry. I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to do it. I was doing like a lot of 3D modeling as well as game design. And this is while I was getting my master's degree. And there was actually a local place where I was getting my degree that sort of everybody went to work for afterward. That I was like, yeah, I'll probably end up there, just trying to figure it out. And then I actually read a book by my mentor, James Palgi, which is all about games and learning. And he's kind of who kicked off like a lot of the games and learning movement, right? And looking at games, commercial games as like great learning tools, right? Like, Portal is actually an amazing like physics learning game. And my mind was so blown by this. I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, that I've never thought about it like this before. And I got so into it that I was like, okay, I'm going to write my thesis now. Instead of doing a thesis project, I'm going to research the community of Minecraft modders. And I just like got so into that and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just see if I can like work with these people, right? Work with James Palgi and his wife, Betty G, who's also a games and learning scholar, and they wanted to work with me. So, it's like with Kevin, it's like, hey, it was a match. So I moved out to Arizona State, and ended up just really loving it and really getting into that sort of nitty gritty of, how games are, and commercial games as well, right? Not just sort of educational or serious games, are just really, really great devices for learning because they're really compatible with how humans learn naturally. So, there's a lot of research in education and learning sciences around games. And then, it all kind of cycles back around to like, oh, but then I want to make like the amazing game. So, it's one of those, I also have ADHD, and that's explanatory, I think, to a lot of like my my life path where I'm like, this is really interesting now, because I just find so many things fascinating. But yeah, I just felt really passionately about it.
And on the topic of inspirations, Kevin, I believe your kids, right, have been an inspiration for you. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Our daughter Kenzie is almost 2. She's November 1st, she'll be 2. And, my wife and I, so I started working at Age of Learning on ABC Mouse, I think in like 2014, 2015. And, we were trying to have kids at that point. And, working on ABC Mouse was, a very inspirational sort of project, right? Globally sort of resonant, early childhood education, a lot of gamification in terms of trying to help kids develop a love of learning. That was what they were all about. And around the same time, started to develop an interest in positive psychology and well-being science, and wasn't really able to pregnancy didn't really take for a handful of years, and then when it finally took and she was born in November 2019, that was a really big motivator for me to sort of take this risk and jump off from Riot, which talking about team experiences was one of the best team experiences that I'd had, but really trying to create something for her as sort of enjoyable as the games that I grew up playing, and as potentially impactful as something like an ABC Mouse or some of the other really great educational games out there, really came into focus, and was just really motivated by her coming into the world. Was not quite an easy entry. It was she had to be resuscitated. My wife was almost passed as well during the emergency C-section, and it just it brought everything into focus for me in terms of what was important to me, what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. I think when I hit the 10-year mark or decade in the games industry, I was like, wow, I've seen a lot. Like, I've worked on a lot of big projects, a lot of smaller projects, and everything in between. What do I want to do for the next 25, 30 years? Like, how can I better myself? How can I, better the world? How can I sort of create that future that I kind of, dreamed about or envisioned as a kid, playing games, growing up, MMOs and the sort. Just like, I don't know, it was a massive motivation, and continues to be, right? Just seeing her being at home, working in the office, like seeing her come and knock on the door or the window and come into our meetings.
Yeah, we all get the benefits of this. It's just so adorable.
It's been a big motivation for thinking about how to create a company, right, and how to structure a culture and create a work, manage work-life conflict. Got past talking about it as a work-life balance because at some level work does not equate to your life. It's a quadrant. It's a slice of the pie. It's not everything, and for some people it is, which is okay. My mom is a fashion designer, and she loves fashion design. It is like her entire world, outside of me and her family. But I really wanted to create something that would allow us to kind of enjoy our child and be there for our child and learn from her as much as she's learning from us. And I think that's part of our aspirational 4-day work week is the recognition that we need diverse experiences to learn and grow. We can't be stuck in an office in an office space 40 hours a week, or in some cases like we did early in our career, Alex, at Blizzard, 60 to 100 hour weeks, right? Like it's you don't learn from that. You get stuck doing the same thing over and over and over, and want to just kind of create that life that is balanced and allows us to learn from the variety of experiences that we have at our fingertips today.
Yeah, I want to comment on the crunch thing, right? I remember having a small pillow and one of those thermal blankets that I kept in a drawer of my desk, so that when hours got too late and I had to wait for a build or something to happen, I could just pull it out, grab a couch or a corner, and take a nap for an hour or two, right?
Yeah.
Development. That was on, I think it was Burning Crusade Crunch.
Yeah.
And that was by far the worst at Blizzard.
I don't know. I might want up there with the StarCraft 2 crunch.
it may have been. I wasn't on StarCraft 2 in that capacity. They just brought me in as a strike team.
Yeah.
So, but I remember seeing, like, I've been now almost two decades, right, in game development, and I remember seeing that change happened as Kaplan and Rob and the others started having kids and families of their own, and all of a sudden this light went on. There was like, oh, and then I went to Riot, and then what was it? Merrill had his first kid, and the same thing happened. I'm like, this is a light that goes on in developers' heads when they realize there's more to life than us burning ourselves out to create a product. And it's unfortunate that it takes a personal experience for that some people to ground themselves in that. But I genuinely believe that the industry is learning that you just can't go all in like that. Whether it's Google with the 4-day work weeks, or you guys are trying here, or the remote home connection, right? Like, my hope is to have kids someday, and doing so, I'd want to be able to be connected and a part of their lives, not just someone who's zipping around and disappearing constantly.
Yeah, I think there's something a part of being youthful in our sort of late teens, early 20s, where the late nights and the long nights and they don't bother us as much. Now in my mid sort of going into late 30s, I could only pull a late night or two in a week before like I'm just wrecked the next day, right? It's and it leads to burnout very easily. But in those sort of early years, it's like you're sort of invincible, right? You grow up as a kid, you're like, I can do anything. I can take all kinds of risks and not have any concern for my health. And then it's all of a sudden like, oh, you start to get a little aged, and you're like, oh, I don't recuperate the same way I did before, did last week, and it starts to give you that perspective. And I think part of that self-management, focus, self-management is one of the things that we're focusing on with our product, is like, how do we help kids, develop those healthy habits and healthy sort of perspectives on sort of longevity, right? It's a challenge.
And on that note, everyone remember to hydrate.
Oh yeah.
I do think that if there were more women in leadership to begin with at a lot of these companies where the crunch was so bad, that it probably would not have gotten that bad. Because as unfortunate as it is, women have always been historically the ones who are the caretakers and have to think about being home with the family. And it's probably sort of a catch-22 kind of a problem, because having those really intense work weeks means that people who are doing the majority of the parenting can't come into those spaces. But by not having people in those spaces who are doing parenting, it makes them really inaccessible for people who are trying to have more aspects to their life than just doing that work. So I think it's great that you guys are approaching your company the way that you are. And I wish that it was more like that in more places quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But, on that question, Kevin, so when will you be retiring now that you've gotten pregnant and had a kid, right? That's a question clearly you need to be asked, right? Just, it's insane. It's insane that was ever a question in the first place, or that the presumption upon culture was so strong that you would ask anyone if they're going to quit their ambitions just to raise a family, or to say that is somehow an inferior decision in either direction, right? And I'm just glad things are improving, because I'm certainly sick of those stories.
Yeah, I love being a dad. There's been a reflection point here or there where it's like, if money were not an issue, right? Like, I don't know that I would be doing this, right? It would be like, how can I spend as much time with my daughter, helping her experience the world and growing and sort of learning how to take on the world when she's old enough. And I don't know. It's just like, being at home, working from home, seeing, how much work my wife puts into just kind of managing the day to day with her and managing the household. It's very hard to even imagine like how there wasn't that sort of cultural consciousness about women in the workplace and women in general prior to, maybe it's not a prior to, it's sort of perhaps generational shifts that we're seeing at play, but it's like, I don't know, it's a full-time job plus, right? And the fact that I am home and I'm able to contribute and sort of lean in on that is really rewarding for me, as opposed to, being locked away in an office 10 to 12 hours in a day and sort of being completely disconnected from that lifestyle. I can't even fathom that.
It's great that you can be with your family. It's so important.
I remember when my father first, I have a really strange background in that my father was at IBM, which was, one of the old companies. And they actually tried to just pilot a work at home project where they actually ran physical lines to our home so we could connect to the internet. This was back in, 89, 91, 92, right? Way back. The whole idea was, hey, let's go ahead, see if you can actually effectively work from home, do coding, all of that. And even when he did that, he would just completely shutter himself away and have no interaction, no sort of, he wasn't present, right? He just was working in a different place. And so, and obviously that didn't last very long. And he was like, I'm just gonna go back to the office. It's better. I don't have to deal with anything, right? And I can get food and see my friends, whatever. But I really love that not just all of us having to go through that experience of really being home, present with ourselves, in touch with others remotely, has actually softened all of these barriers, right? When I started working at Moon, it was one of the very few companies that was doing remote work, right? And would let you work from anywhere. Now it's like we should all be considering this. And I just love that, that shift is happening.
Yeah.
I'll just sort of note that I think your dad's perspective, or sort of like, oh, I want to go back to the office, is definitely something that I've struggled with. Right, is around those like perceived kind of, I don't know, flow states or productivity states where you're like, oh, I've got 4 hours to go into the office and not be interrupted by anything. Right. Those kind of blocks are harder to come by. Right. Where it's like, you can't stop your daughter coming into the door and like knocking on the door and tapping on the window and be like, hey, like, it's me. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Love that. Which definitely provides for more challenge in sort of figuring out how to be productive. Because I don't want to lock myself away. I don't want to be inaccessible to her. I don't want to be like her growing up having, trauma related to me, like not being being attentive to her, which, is part of, I think, I don't know, that growth that we're all having.
And if I can pivot just a little bit, I wanted to go back and ask you a little bit more about your RPG and what the story is, because you said that it has to do with teaching kids emotional maturity and sort of understanding themselves. It's not just sort of like math or spelling, which maybe some of that is included, but the values that you were talking about instilling they really lit up a light bulb for me. So what's the plot line and how is that all connected?
Really wish we had Sandy here.
I know, yeah. Sandy, she's the mastermind behind all of that. But I think I might want to clarify. So the framework we're working from is called SEL, or social-emotional learning. So this is what a really sort of maybe a reductive, but I think good way of describing it is like, think of what Mr. Rogers is trying to teach you, right? So those kinds of what are sometimes referred to as soft skills, although there's certainly more to it than that. And we're, focusing on those. And, it's actually really funny that you ask that, because I keep joking that, gosh, I just wish we were making a physics game sometimes, because I'm like, it'd be so much easier to just be like, how do we integrate math into like, mechanics, right? Which to everybody making a STEM game out there, I'm just kidding. I know that that's also extremely difficult, but trying to translate that into, an experience where, how do we model things like, self-regulation and in a game? That's kind of the challenge that we talk about every day. So I'll defer to Kevin in terms of how much we want to talk about the plot.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want to get into it, but, we're doing something along the lines of a mystery adventure, something full of exploration and discovery, talking about that journey of life, and really keying in on relationships and friendships, and sort of helping each other out. There's a sort of cooperative element to that, but it is sort of the power of narrative, right? If we think about a lot of work that's been done in just sort of media and entertainment to move narratives forward in certain ways, I think there is a really huge untapped potential of narrative, and at least so far as an intentional usage of narrative. And I think that's a lot of the sort of scaffolding, the learning scaffolding that we're trying to bring in, is like, how do we carefully construct these narratives and these characters and these sort of story arcs and sort of character relationships to showcase and model and sort of represent what it is we're trying to help kids learn. And there's a lot of nuts and bolts sort of related to that, but it's just we want it to play and feel like any entertainment game, right? That's kind of the promise of game-based learning as opposed to gamification, is the idea that we can marry these or sort of create a union between like learning objectives and entertaining, engaging game experiences. So That's I don't know. Does that answer your question? I hope.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. I have a lot of fond memories of educational learning type games that I played when I was a kid, as well as games that weren't specifically trying to be educational, but that still I learned a lot from. So I totally resonate with that. And then there's also sort of something that I've noticed a lot lately in parenting, which is a lot of parents these days have issues with screen time and showing their children screens or trying to limit the amount that their kids are exposed to screens. So I'm wondering if you guys can weigh in on that, or if you have any argument about it, if you try and persuade people or anything like that.
I'm concerned about it. I'm definitely concerned about it. I think it is something that we should be concerned about, right? Is what are our kids not doing if they're sort of overusing screens? And it's something that we're looking at in terms of how we design some of our meta systems, right? Like, we want scarcity of the experience to be something that is sort of front and center. Like, how effective does a child engage with our game and our experience, and like how are they most sort of effectively using that time to play the game that they have, right? I think our intervention target and model is like, we want kids to play twice a week for 30 minutes max, and then like we might give them some energy to kind of play in addition to that, but we don't want this to be something that they can obsess over and sort of endlessly engage with. I think some of our early days at Blizzard and sort of recognizing with World of Warcraft the real life impact that how engaging and dare I say addictive that game was at certain points in our lives. Like, there were a lot of real world consequences as it related to adults and kids playing that game, and sort of where it ended up, what sort of outcomes were being derived from that. And it's something we're definitely looking carefully at, because it is a concern, for me and my wife, like, because it's not just device screen time, right? It's all media.
Yeah.
I think one of the stats that we've looked at is kids by the time they're 18 will have spent 50% more time being entertained on a screen than learning in school. Like, that's a pretty wild sort of stat to think about. And it's definitely front and center for us about every moment of the game. Like, what are we doing with it? Like, how are we trying to engage kids, and in what ways? But it's also I think a trade-off for us as well to think about, like, that entertainment value and engagement value, if you will, as it relates to like how much learning are we baking into each and every moment. Where I think gamification is perhaps a little too heavy-handed, where it's like every single second that you're looking at that screen needs to have educational value, and that's not super engaging.
Yeah, I love that you called out kind of World of Warcraft on that too, right? Because I remember when one of the first players passed away in a net cafe, right? All the designers got pulled into a room, and like we had to sit down, like, okay, what are we going to do about this, right? And in fact, even the name of this company, GameDesignSkill.com, actually also has a secondary meaning, GameDesignSkill.com, right? To remind me and there's people who listen in that, hey, there are real life consequences to the choices you make in your game design decisions, right, upon other people. I don't bring that out perhaps in most of the marketing, but it's there, right? It's there to sit there and kind of just remind you that, hey, what you do as a designer really matters. It has an impact. It changes people's lives.
I mean, just to sort of echo that point with our we had a session this week with a 5-year-old, and we definitely had an impact on her emotional state. She was not happy at the end of the game. She wasn't able to reach the objective, and it was like you saw that visceral reaction, of a 5-year-old being very disappointed and upset and frustrated, and it was like, I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that to you. Seeing.
Was it the door?
What's that?
Was it the door?
No, it was something else. That sort of resulted in the end of her session, and it was like, how. But that moment is also a learning moment. It is something that we are looking at, right? Like, how do we help? I forget what it's called. I think Katie mentioned it the other week. Kelly, was it productive failure? How do you help kids develop grit and resilience around their emotions that get triggered by games, right? I remember growing up playing Nintendo, and my cousin was 4 years older than me, and he would beat me at every single game, and it was one of the most frustrating experiences. Like, now reflecting back on that I would bash my controllers against the console. I threw a computer out the window. Like, I wouldn't say that I was very highly emotionally regulated at that point in my life. And
oh my god,
reflecting back on that, oh man, how do we kind of recognize that is the potential of game experiences, especially in those sibling type of relationships, right? Like, I was an only child, my cousin was 4 years older, he was basically a brother, but he was better than me at everything, and I didn't know how to deal with that. Emotional regulation was not something that really came to the forefront for me until Blizzard. I almost got fired from Blizzard for sort of wearing my emotions on my sleeves and being very, openly vocal and critical about certain things. And, I thankfully learned a better way and had a mentor sort of help coach and develop me, more in that way. And I'm so thankful for it, because otherwise I wouldn't be who I am today. And I think, part of that goal, the goal that we have is how do we help bring that learning, as opposed to almost getting fired from, a job you really cherish, or, some kind of group or community that you really are in love with. How do we help kids develop those skills much earlier in life and kind of get on a path towards developing, lifelong relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kevin, I just want to say I really appreciate the conscientiousness of the answer you gave before, and I almost sort of gave a little bit of a trick question, but so sorry about that. But my nephews, I love them so much, and they love video games too. But my sister and her husband, they're also pretty conscientious about how much screen time that they get. And one thing that I see in games that's so different now than even just when I was a kid, is there's such commercialization, and the drive for money makes it so that all of these games are so oriented around keeping the player involved and trying to get every last cent. So when I played Angry Birds as a kid, it was a simple game, and you would throw the bird at the pigs and break down their towers, and that was it. And you could pretty much play all of it, I don't think costing anything. I mean, the game originally maybe was 99 cents, and that was it, but it was a one-time purchase. But now that version of the game is not available. There's only the second Angry Birds, and my nephew was playing this game, and it's supposed to be fun, but he wasn't having fun because he had to get a certain amount of points so that he could get the apple to feed his little baby bird, which he had named after himself. He called it Junior. And I mean, it's really cute, but at the same time, it was making him feel so emotionally distressed because little Junior was starving in the game, and he would say, "Mommy, he's so hungry. I have to keep playing so I can feed him." Oh. And he needed to go to bed, and he was so tired. He was so tired. No. But he didn't want Junior to be hungry. And of course the solution is pay money, buy the points so that you can get the apple. And I was just like, this is messed up, dude. This game is not good for him. It's not making him happy. It's not fun. But it is addictive. And I don't think that's ethical game design, especially stuff that's oriented for kids. So I'm glad that you think about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of sort of not quality screen time, right? So one of the things that when we think about things like the number of hours of screen time or the quantity, right, the quality is really, I would argue, more important in terms of, what they're doing in that time because, anything, right, game design and technology, like you were saying, Alex, right, it's a double-edged sword. It can be used for really good purposes or really terrible purposes. And, a big part of games and game design, or a big sort of area of it, right, is that sort of Skinner box, dopamine, how am I going to get the next hit? Or like you said, that sounds very emotionally manipulative, with this little bird, right? And certainly, that's something that we try to be really conscientious of. I feel like when we come up with an idea, we talk about something, it's like, well, but is that like, okay for kids or parents, right? We don't want to be exploitative of parents too, right? We were just talking about this last week around something we were discussing where it's like, well, we also don't want to like paywall parents out of, experiences that they could have with their children. So, it's a really interesting balance to strike with, because we are not, a lot of educational games might be funded by, say, a government or, especially outside of the US or university, right? So, or perhaps some kind of grant, but that's not our model. So it's a really interesting thing to talk about is how we have a model, right, where we can sort of have this ethical sort of business, right, where we're generating value as people are, giving us money for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love that term quality of screen time as well. That's why I won't play MMOs anymore. It's generally the quality of the timing there. If it's not played with people you're getting close to, it's just low. High time, low quality. Rather, play a 30-minute or 2-hour game that just has me, a short hike, phenomenal. 4 hours, you're done.
I had that one on a syllabus last semester. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
I want to add on the topic. It's been something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about. Reflecting on the state of the games industry and the state of games and sort of the business model of games, right? Like gaming is larger than film and music combined, I think, sort of in the last several years. And, there's a sort of trend of microtransactions and monetization that, games have moved towards, which have become really effective sort of wealth transfer mechanisms, which is like, how do we sort of get as much money out of our player as possible, and kind of continue to invest some amount of that back into creating new game experiences. But for kids, like those are really unhealthy. We've even seen some children's educational products that have had really I'll dare say predatory type of monetization practices where they do create that pinch with the parent, which is like, hey mommy, I need some money so I can do this thing, right? Like that's really gross. Just come out and say that. It's and I think
banned
that's
it for a reason.
What's that?
Europe's banned it for a reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Its games can't even have loot boxes in them, period.
Yep. And it's something that's really difficult when there are not a lot of business models that are not doing that today, or you have games that are made for adults, right? And primarily I would say, 99% of games that are made today are made for adults. They're not made for kids. But what do we inevitably do? We're like, oh, we play games growing up. We want to have our kids experience this game. Let's go give them this experience. And then it's like, wait, how many times are you asking me for money every day? Like, why can't you make any more progress? The paywalls in games, are really frustrating for me. I remember seeing some of them in Clash Royale when that game first started to implement the paywall. I was like, wait a minute, like I was happy to pay you $20 like for a one-time thing, but now you want me to pay you $20 every like 3 months. Come on, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, Kevin, it has been so nice talking to you. It's really great to be able to talk to some individuals with a lot of expertise and experience with children's games and entertainment and learning. And so thank you so much for your time. It's been great to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you both so much for having us. Yeah, this has been really fun.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great to catch up, Alex.
Yeah, it's great to catch up too. And Kelly, Kevin, I'm really glad I introduced the two of you. I thought it was a little bit of a gamble at the time, but you guys were value aligned and everything at that point just worked itself out. And I think that if there's something I wanted to say about that, right, it's put people together who have aligned values and they'll figure out the rest, right? I didn't sit there being like, oh, you need to talk to Kelly. She's going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, just, I don't know. You should go talk to this person. She'll probably be a great connection or resource for you. And then you figure out the rest, right? And it's so much of this industry and life itself is about who you know, not just who you know, but how much you care about what they're going through and putting them in a situation that will help them move forward through whatever they're in. That's really the secret. People ask me, Alex, how are you so social? I don't think of myself super social, right? I just think about what do other people need? How can I put them next to someone else who might be able to help them with that? And that's it. That's it.
You're very empathetic, Alex.
It's been a journey. It's been a journey. There was literally a period of time where I blocked a lot of that out because it was so overwhelming for me, and those were some rough days. But that's another topic, another top podcast. Kelly, before we go, you said you were ASU. Was that in Phoenix?
Yeah, it was in Tempe. Yeah.
Okay, so it was fun actually. Ari and I have a mutual friend out in Tempe. Actually, we just flew out to Arizona out there and actually walked past the ASU building.
Yep.
Wow, it is a beautiful, beautiful school. So
the campus is wild out there. Yeah.
It is enormous. So you gave up a really phenomenal opportunity to take another phenomenal opportunity. I can't wait to see what you do together. So.
All right, before we send off, do you guys have any social media that you would like to plug here or anything like that I can put at the top of the video?
Sure, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Kelly M. Tran. I don't tweet that much, but I do sometimes. I kind of plug my Twitch stream.
Of course,
please do.
Anything that you want.
We'll put the link right below the video so everyone can watch the stream.
All right, sweet. Yeah, that is twitch.tv/sweaterwolf.
Sweater Wolf.
Yes.
There's a story.
Yes. Well, actually, so you probably heard jangling and saw the little creature moving around. So it's my dog Cass. And so I got my name, and people ask me about it all the time because one time I was looking at him and I'm like, we had a sweater on him because he's a small dog. He gets cold, and it just looks so absurd. And I was like, this thing used to be a wolf, and like now we just have a sweater on him. He's like a little sweater wolf. So he's the inspiration for it.
That's a delight.
I've tried to explain Twitch to him. I don't think he gets it, but
his legacy will live on, though.
And I'm pretty antisocial, so the only thing I'll plug is at Evolved Play, which is on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So you can check us out there.
Yeah, I know. I should be in a better company, woman.
No. I'm all about self-promotion. Do you? Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, follow Kelly's Twitch stream and follow the company, Evolved Play. And both of you, thank you so much for being on the show today. And remember to like and subscribe, comment below if you have any questions. And I hope that you guys all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye,
you too.
Thank
have
you.
a good one.
Cheers.
Bye.